Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm in a little bit different of a background. Since my Christmas tree is up, I thought it would be fun to film today's video in front of my Christmas tree. But we are going through all of the books that I read in November today. So I have my little stack here of all of the books that I physically own of all the books that I've read, and then of course I have some that I've read on my Kindle or listened to on Libby through my library. Let's just get into it. I read 12 books this month in November. I DNF'd 0 books, so it was a good month for that. And then I read 4 fantasy books, 1 romance book, 1 general fiction, 3 graphic novels / mangas, 2 historical fiction, and 1 thriller book. So I had a pretty good range of genres this month, which is fun. I feel like last month it was very heavily on fantasy, which I still read majority, like the most fantasy out of all the genres, but I feel like it's more widespread. I had a good amount of everything. I did read 4 out of the 6 books that I had on my November TBR, and I also read a book that I have on my December TBR, so 1 book down on December. But let's just get into it. The first book that I read this month was Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I really enjoyed this one. I'm giving it 4 stars. I have been loving this little series so far. I'm super excited for the next one to come out. If you don't know, this series follows Evie Sage as she becomes the assistant to the villain in her little town, but in this book she gets a promotion to apprentice to the villain, and it just continually follows their story. It is a very slow burn romance. They still aren't like fully 100% together, and this is book 2. So very slow burn, but I do love a good slow burn. So I have been really enjoying this, and I love that it's not super spicy because I am not a personal spice lover. I usually skip past them in books, so I love that about this series. Highly recommend. I'm super excited for the next one to come out. The next book that I read on my Kindle because I am waiting for it to come out in paperback, but it is House of Flame and Shadow, the 3rd Crescent City book. I am giving this one 5 stars. I loved it. I loved the crossover. I loved how it kind of tied all 3 series together. I am so happy that I read ACOTAR and Throne of Glass before reading Crescent City, because I could see all the little details that I would have overlooked if I hadn't read the other series before. So I am super happy that I read Crescent City last, and I am just now sitting here waiting for the next Sarah J Maas book to come because I have read all of them. I have no other Sarah J Maas books to read. Technically, she has like some Catwoman book or something, but not 100% sure if I'm going to be reading that one or not. But all of her other series I have fully completed. So I'm just sitting here waiting for the next ACOTAR to come out. Sarah, where is it? Where's the update? We need something. Anyway. The 3rd book that I read this month was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. She is one of my favorite authors. She's an auto-buy. I have read almost everything that she has out. I only have 2 more books of hers that I have not read. That is like stuff that's already been out. She has a new book coming out in 2025, and I'm putting it on my 25 books to read in 2025, and I am super excited for it. But this one I gave a 4.5 star. I seriously love her. Every single book that I have read from her has been a 4 to 5 star, somewhere in that range. And this one, along with all the others, is in that range. It's a 4.5. It's not my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is why it's not a 5 star, but I still adored this one. It follows Emma, and she marries her high school sweetheart, and then on their 1-year wedding anniversary, he gets into a helicopter crash and is presumed dead. And then a couple years later, she is now engaged to another person, and she gets a phone call from her ex-husband, or not ex-husband, but the husband that she thought was dead. she gets a call from him saying that he's actually alive and he's coming home. So she has to try to navigate that situation and figure out which person she wants to be with, basically. It was super heartfelt. I adored it. The situation was like being married. I can't even imagine going through something like this. And it was just very interesting, and I just loved the way that it was written, going back and forth kind of. So highly recommend this one. Now a major motion picture. I'm gonna have to watch that. I did not know that. That will be on my list to watch, I guess. Next, I read a manga on my Kindle. I read the 4th volume of Spy Family. I've been talking about this. I've read at least 1 to 2 every month recently, so I have been really enjoying this series. It just follows a family. Dad is a spy, the mom is an assassin, and the daughter is a telepath, and they all are hiding that secret from each other while trying to do this big assignment. And now they have a dog, so cute, and the dog can see the future. So all the fun little things, but it is a fun little series. I'm giving it 3 stars. That is like basically what I rate mangas and graphic novels. Unless I don't like them, then they'll be lower, but it's very rare that they're higher than that just because they're so short. I read them in like an hour. And then I read A Man Called Ove. I really enjoyed this. This was my first Frederick Bachman book, and I will say I am going to have to read some more of his books. I already have 2 that I found from Goodwill that I have on my physical TBR, but I really enjoyed this book. I was sobbing at the end. Sobbing. I've seen the movie with Tom Hanks, so I knew exactly what was coming and everything, but I was still sitting there sobbing. My husband was sitting next to me on the couch, and he had to get up and go into the kitchen because he was trying not to laugh because of how hard I was crying at this book. And he ended up making me some ice cream to help me feel a little better after finishing this. But this was a 5-star. I adored it. It follows Ove, who is this super old man. He's super grumpy, and he is basically navigating life after his wife dies, and he is suicidal, and so he is trying to kill himself while navigating life, and the new neighbors across the street are kind of just show up into his life randomly, and he's learning how to live again, basically. It was beautiful, heartfelt story. If you want a book that will make you cry, highly, highly recommend. And I reread Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I have been rereading the series, and I am loving them. Again, 5 stars. These books will always be 5 stars in my heart, but I absolutely love these books, so I will be continuing to listen to them. I'm currently listening to the 5th one. Sorry if you hear any noises outside. They are mowing some grass or something at my apartment complex. Sorry in advance. And then I read volume 6 of the Lore Olympus books. 3 stars. Again, this follows Persephone and Hades. I feel like I've talked about at least one of these for the past couple months as well, but I'm not going to talk too much more about it because it's just continually following Hades and Persephone. It's a fun little graphic novel. If you love Greek mythology, highly recommend. The next book that I read is another one that made me cry and another 5-star read. It was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I adored this book. I read it with my mom's copy. She let me borrow it. And then on Black Friday, on Amazon, it was on sale for $6. So I bought my own copy because I knew I was going to want to have my own copy because it was beautiful. Again, I was sobbing at the end of this book, just like I was with A Man Called Ove. This one is set in World War II, and it follows 2 sisters on their journey through the war in France. It was beautiful. The ending had me sobbing, but I was also crying multiple times throughout the book as well. Same with A Man Called Ove. If you love historical fiction, I would highly recommend this book. especially if you love books set in World War II like I do. And it's supposed to be they're supposed to be making a movie out of this book. And the Fanning sisters, Elle and Dakota, are supposed to be playing the sisters of this book. So I'm super excited to go see that whenever it comes out. Don't know when that is, but highly recommend. The next book that I read is again on my Kindle. It was volume 5 of Spy Family. 3 stars. I'm just gonna skip right past it because I already talked about the 4th one and it's the exact same story, just continuing along. So 3 stars. And then I listened to The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhorn. This is actually my book club's book pick for the month, so we are meeting on Sunday to talk about it. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. There were certain aspects of the book that were super intriguing to me, as you are following a girl in the like 1700s who is a midwife, and there is a trial going on for a murder of someone who was accused of raping someone, and so you're following that trial process, and that part was super interesting to me, super intriguing. I always wanted to know what was happening next in that aspect. But the other part of it, with a bunch of midwifey things, labor, delivery, talking about pregnancy, all that kind of stuff. I'm not a mom, so it didn't really resonate with me in that way. And then I don't know if I've talked about this on this channel, but back in 2020, right around COVID time, I was diagnosed with a couple different things that will make it really hard for me to have kids when the time eventually comes that I would want to have kids. And so it can just be really hard for me to hear about that kind of stuff, especially when it's in as much detail and stuff as this book was, because I have wanted to be a mom my entire life. It is like the #1 thing that I've always wanted to be from a very young age. And so the fact that I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to be a mom is still 4 years after being diagnosed with everything, is still really hard for me some days, especially when I'm reading a book like this and it's just like 70% of the book is talking about that. And like when I'm scrolling on TikTok and I see a pregnancy video after pregnancy video type thing, it's just like, sorry. It can be really hard for me, and so because of that, I think is why I'm rating it the way that I was. If I didn't have this situation in my life, I'm sure I probably would have enjoyed hearing about it a lot more, but it just became too much, so I was just like trying to finish it at that point. So that's my little spiel. Take the information as you will. The next book that I listened to was The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. I really enjoyed it. This is the one book that I read from my December TBR because it became available on Libby like a couple days before the end of the month. So I went ahead and started listening to it and finished it on the last day of the month, but it was really good. I'm giving it 4 stars. I love a Frida McFadden book. This is probably either my favorite or my second favorite book I've read from her. And I've read 4 of her books now. I think this one was my favorite. I thought for sure I knew exactly where the story was going. Jaw was dropped. I thought I had it figured out. Turned out I didn't. It was someone I completely didn't even know that it was going to be. So I love that Frida does that with a lot of her books, where it's not like the super obvious choice, but then it's also not the person that you think it's gonna be. Like, I feel like a lot of times with thrillers, I can almost like figure it out before the end, but with a lot of Frida's books, I don't, and I love that. I think I've only predicted 1 of the 4 that I've read from her, so highly recommend this one. I enjoyed it a lot. And then the last book that I read this month was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I am obsessed. This was a 4.5 read for me. I Was hooked from the very beginning. I love an enemies to lovers, and this one's more like rivals to lovers, but I still ate it up. I immediately started the second one because it ends on a cliffhanger, but it just follows a girl who is a writer and she becomes a war correspondent. So she goes to where this war is taking place between two gods, and she is writing about it, and her rival from her previous job ends up also becoming a war correspondent. So there's that dynamic, and I loved it. I'm super excited to continue with the second one. I know it's just a duology, so super excited. Love this one. 4.5 stars. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble about all of the books that I've read. Here are the stack of all the books that I read this month. I am gonna go put these on my shelf now, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!